Hi, Karsten.
Hello. So can you hear people cutting down trees?
Cutting down trees?
Yeah, I'm sitting in a room which is filled with noise from the neighbor cutting down trees. I don't know if you can hear this.
No,
Actually, no.
tree cutting hearable.
Okay, so my microphone kind of seems to work.
Thanks. Yeah, let's wait for the usual 5 minutes in case someone else wants to drop in.
Yeah, and as usual, I will get some coffee.
Sure. Christian, did you have a good cutoff?
Well, I got some things submitted, so it worked.
Right.
Could have been better, but yeah.
Yeah, always.
Sadly, the talk submitted to the B-Sides Vienna for group for Onion Oscore got rejected. And shortly after I saw that we might talk about it at TRG in Dublin. So lose some, win some.
Right.
Yeah, I like this new greeting between IETFers. Hi, Christian, did you have a good cutoff?
Yeah.
Yeah, we cannot always use it, so when we can.
So Marco has the musical headsets again.
Really?
Yes, it sounds like some wind is going to through your place.
I'm sitting still and the fan of my laptop is almost mute. So I wonder what I'm really capturing here.
Well, there is some clock frequency with that seems to have components in the audible space and is coupling into your microphone.
I should treat myself and buy a new earset, I think. Really?
But it really sounds like sitting on the beach and having a high wind situation. Very nice. It reminds me of being on vacation.
Well, too bad you hear it, but I don't. So
yeah, that's generally the problem with the way we use microphones. We don't have side tone, which is something that the telephone people invented a long time ago. So it seems we are not going to get too many more people in there.
yeah, I was hoping for Thomas maybe to contribute on that issue that basically he started, but Will do. Okay, but then let's get started. Actually, I think I'll cut the introduction a bit short, all considering
Yes.
who is here. So this is an official core interim meeting. The note well applies. You should be familiar with that. It's about IPR and code of conduct. Be nice with each other. That said, I think we still have only one agenda item. It's working on core CLAR and especially PR 40. That's right. I saw Christian very active in the last hour or so. So shall we start from an overview of the PR or the latest commits?
Well, I have some slides, so
Oh, just
I'm
uploaded?
yes,
Okay.
just in time. I think about 2 seconds after 4 p.m.
Okay, do you want to take control yourself?
Yes.
Please do.
Okay, so we don't need the first slide. That was just for the people who don't know how this process works. So we could look at multiple issues, but I think the issue that's most worth completing at this point in time is 39 or PR number 40. I think a few other issues are covered by 40. I didn't look closely, but I think we need to consider whether we can close other issues when 40 is merged. But none seems to come to mind right now. Okay, so basically the observation is that source addresses of a request are not trustworthy. They can be spoofed. That's observation number one. And observation number two is even if they used to be trustworthy, they can change, for instance, because of renumbering or because of some net induced instability and so on. So we have less trust in these source addresses than we would like to have. And this gives us two areas of problems, some operational instability when the source address changes. It becomes hard to get rid of your old observation requests or to keep them for the new source address and so on. And DOS opportunities. And I think we need an introduction to the section that really describes the problem a little bit first. Even though most of the people know most of these things, they may not have a more structured view of this space. Okay, so obviously this is not a new problem, and we even have our own RFC that mitigates some of this. I didn't add the fact that DTLS connection IDs now provide a way to continue work with a different source address. Yeah, what are other people doing? I think the most important work, the most interesting work here is that by Quick actually going ahead and defining an anti-amplification limit, which is the number 3. So if your response wouldn't consume more than 3 times as many bytes as the incoming data up to this point have been, then you are not really such a useful accomplice in amplification. So you might as well not do any additional mitigation. So that is an important thing in Quick, and I think we have pretty good consensus in the IETF that this is a good way to handle the problem for UDP, or handle part of the problem for UDP, and for the other cases we have the echo option, and we also have new work like the return routability check draft for DTLS. But the RFC draft requires a negotiation, the CoAP native form, well, it's relatively new, but it's something that has been CoAP, part of CoAP for a while. So we don't negotiate it. You get stuck in unauthorized if you cannot do the echo option. Okay, so
can we stay for a very short moment on what DTLS does? Because I failed to like classify this correctly between session resumption and what the new DTLS options are. Is this something that will affect session resumption as well, or is session resumption just when the address stays the same?
actually, I don't know.
Okay, thanks. Then I'll have to ask Achim.
Yeah, I was hoping that Achim or Thomas would be in the meeting and would answer this kind of question. Yeah, clearly we want to look at this document very closely before we finish this issue. But I think the important thing is that that is a secure way to do this. An on-path attacker can achieve a return routability check, and that's not true for it can achieve echo, but that's not true for return routability check in DTLS. And of course, we need to identify how exactly you would do this in OSCORE, probably using the echo option, but keeping some security in mind.
I'm not sure whether the echo option is the right choice there. I have a bit in transport indication going in that direction, but generally we don't want to ascertain this in OSCORE.
So what would we do in OSCORE?
So what I think we can do is allow the server to express addresses that allow a party to address addresses that it considers authoritative of itself. So in particularly, a server can state that. And by the way, if you're using any other reverse proxy than that address, please think of me as kind of there is something wrong. And I'm sorry, I'll have to open the door. I'll be back in 20 seconds.
Okay. So Marco, what's your take on that? How we should do that in OSCORE?
Yeah, pretty much along those same lines, and I'm trying to remember what exactly is said when using OSCORE about echo. So Christian can confirm, but I think it can be both inner and outer, but it can be only outer if it's exactly about return routability check, basically.
Yes. So echo, yeah, I'm back. Echo can be outer, but so if it's so the return routability check we can do. If it's about an active attacker can also work with an outer echo option. If we wanted to address traffic misdirection by an active attacker, then an active attacker already gets the data. If we want to capture some kind of triangle routing attacks, then we'll have to encode the addresses in there, and that blocks proxies. So that can only that is a much harder problem because it breaks something that we actually want to have.
Okay. So I think a little bit of that discussion would actually be useful in the document.
I'm not sure. Kind of might be useful in the document, but might not be used. But that section might not be the right place.
Okay.
because I think that this section is supposed to give concrete kind of help people get this implementation of replay protection and of what to do if the address doesn't match, right?
Yeah.
And the other things are more like additional concerns if you want to have more properties than OSCORE gives you.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so are we done with this slide?
I think so, yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, so we have a new section now, and the introduction discusses the problem. As I said, I would prefer this to be a little bit more structured. And then we have two subsections, one about amplification mitigation and the other one about replay protection. When using a new address might disable your current replay protection scheme. So let's talk about 261.
I'm not sure those are really related the way you're expressing it.
Okay.
Replay protection. The replay protection is for when you have lost your state, which is
Okay.
not, which just also happens over long periods of time in which also the addresses might change, but but this is not about the address change.
Okay, so how do we get this into the current section, which is really a bit different in focus?
Well, the one thing that ties those two sections together is that there is the same way of mitigating it. That is by using the echo by using the echo option, and
Okay.
that you can if they coincide, you can get both outcomes with a single round trip.
Aha. Okay, so right now that is not something that the text makes me understand. So I think we should have a little bit more context here that explains why we are discussing this here.
That I can provide.
Okay, so on the amplification side, we have the amplification factor as a new recommendation. So this is a clarification in the sense of adopting something that has consensus in a different space already.
No, that is already adopted in 9175, which updates 7252.
Okay.
So it's just
Good.
pointing out that this has been updated.
Okay. Good. And then there is the statement that the normal way to handle the situation is the echo option. And other ways are possible, but this is what you normally should do. So that there is a stronger recommendation to actually use 9175. So the other thing is the replay protection, and apparently I'm not understanding this section. So it would be good if someone could fix this so I can understand it.
Yep, that's a very clear situation then, yes. That this needs better text.
Yeah, I like the warning at the end that safety is an application concept. I think that's really important to clarify this. Okay, So the plan would be to polish this pull request a bit more, see
Yes.
what other issues maybe also are closed by this, and then merge it and resubmit this in 10 days when the Internet Draft repository opens again.
So it reopens on Sunday morning, Dublin time, right?
Yes.
Right.
So we still have the Saturday to have any in-person discussion that we may need.
Yeah, we can bring this up also during the hackathon and also with Martina as it relates to DNS over co-op
Right.
aspects. Yeah. Okay, I tried to capture as much as I could also in the notes, but the slides did a good job already. That looks like the last slide. Do you
Yes.
have any more points on this PR or other issues you wanted to check?
Well, I want to get rid of a few of the issues that we listed pretty early in the process and where we now essentially need to check whether they are covered. So that might be something we can do until 10 days from now. But I wasn't identifying any particular issue. There are some pretty interesting issues above number 40 that I think we should be discussing soon.
Is there any issue that you opened, Christian, and you wanted to check soonish?
Actually, yeah. Actually, yes. So there is this issue 41, which is probably something one might also discuss during a hackathon. But this is about something that I think many of us kind of understand, but is never really explicit somewhere, especially when conveying the concepts to others. That is, what do you really need to take to send a co-op request? So you you start from a URI, but is that enough? And that is something that actually I would need some words about for in order to make progress on implementation. So that would be helpful if people could have a look at it. Essentially,
I think that the first thing that we should do is answer the same question for HTTP and see what we can learn from that. So an HTTP request requires a DNS server somewhere. So that is in practice, yes, not in theory, but in practice.
Well, if you're at that level of in practice, then it probably also requires that it also fixes the security expectations to the common browser certificates being used.
Yeah, whatever that is. There are no common browser certificates because
there's the CABF.
Yes, but then every large organization has their own certificates. So there is some context here, both in the DNS server and in the certificate routes, that is entirely organization dependent. So most organizations will try to minimize the complexity of this context, but it can become interesting. And I think what we are experiencing here with CoAP, that it's even way more interesting. used to tell my students that URI doesn't need context to resolve it, and I'm not at all sure that is true. I mean, that's the original definition, that it's uniform, but that's not what actually is happening out there.
Well, it's uniform, it's not universal.
Yes.
Yeah, from my side, I found also pretty interesting the recently rehashed issue 10 on request URI not defined. I think we have a good start with that taxonomy you sketched, Christian.
Yep, that's definitely one other that can be caught by where we can aggregate multiple.
Yeah.
So I left a comment there the other day, and well, also to the other related issue that you opened, more for the sake of naming, I understood in group com proxy, and probably this is really opening the understanding of different existing or to be options where they seem to do different things, but still they are relatable.
Yeah, I think the whole request URI discussion should maybe be combined with at least some examination of what the information model is we have for URIs. Obviously, with all the work on CRIs, we now have a heightened degree of attention for that information model, and the point of, what is it, section 6 of RFC 7252 is essentially to extract the information from the URI that goes into the data model that CoAP uses. So I think that comes back to the request URI. And for instance, if you don't give a URI host, then there is an implied URI host, which is not exactly something that we have in HTTP.
But at least it's reasonably well defined. Although we'll have to keep an eye out for transports to kind of also define to keep defining that in new transports.
Yes, and there's another one that discusses the scheme definition. Which one was that? Whether we have to have a definition of the URI scheme for each new transport.
I'm not sure that's really in core clar.
Oh, where did I see that?
Could it be in href? Just thinking of the CRI scheme, that's why.
Yeah,
But it's a long shot. Maybe
I
I'm wrong.
do touch on that in transport indication, but the answer I give there is no, we don't, and like we didn't have the tools back then to do it, and we do have them now, so like no more exceptions.
so I think I'm talking about 38.
So is co-op over TCP a case in point that restates things?
Co-op over TCP definitely does restate some things in that regard. Or more precisely, it does not technically restate things, but things in 72.5.2 were not phrased in such a way that it would be easily extendable without copy pasting, which is technically not a restatement because it would not apply there. But core CLA would be a chance to rephrase things in such a way that they are applicable to different transports, and then the transports only have to fill in the small details. That is, what is the default scheme and what is the URI host that I reconstruct when I'm going from a packet to a URI. And by the way, I think it would be way over time that we just declare proxy scheme as an option with a default, but I'm afraid that's like too big for core CLA.
What would be the default?
Proxy scheme now has semantics of possibly being absent or present.
Yeah.
And the alternative is to be always implicitly present, but there is there is a default. And life in transport indication would be so much easier if it just had been that way from the start. It wasn't. Yeah. If we find any way of making that happen, I'd be super glad. But if we don't, transport indication just has to stay a little more complicated.
So what would be the default?
Co-op or no, not. The default would be as with URI host. The scheme that is associated with the transport. So in 72.5.2, it's co-op or co-op S. In co-op over TCP, it's co-op plus TCP. And in all upcoming newer versions, it would be co-op again.
But the transport is that used for the message we're talking about.
Which is interesting because the transport may change.
No, I mean that it may change, but if so does the network address in a proxy request, and if the proxy deems it necessary that it is kept stable, then it just relays that information, and if it's doing a more reverse proxy thing, then it might alter that with a proxy scheme, just as with a URI host.
Yeah, so maybe something we can do in core CLA is clarify that this choice would have the same result.
That would be great.
So it's not defined that way, but if people implement it that way, they are not going to break things. I think that would be a very good point to make.
Yes, that would be an excellent point. That would be good enough to simplify. I don't want to depend on this with transport indication, but I'd be ready with transport indication to switch over to that explanation.
Okay.
On the point that the transport can change, they'll still work because it's basically relevant hop by hop for the message recipient, right?
Yes.
Right. Meaning that the omission can appear later on across the legs, right?
Yes.
So you may start having a proxy scheme anyway, and then later on a hop removes it.
Yep, as is usually the case when you're using a forward proxy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking also with the hope that changes transport while moving towards the origin server, but okay.
Yeah.
So what we just discussed would be a clarification on the proxy scheme definition in 5 something.
Yeah.
Is that something that proxy scheme number in href automatically inherits, or should href restate that?
Well, we cannot really define that default in href.
Yeah, I think href is saying proxy scheme number has the same meaning of proxy scheme. It's just a
Yes.
different encoding. So you would just silently inherit the clarification given by core for proxy scheme. Because if yes, href doesn't need to say anything more about this when introducing
Well,
proxy scheme number, right?
If we do add that statement, it would be beneficial to readers of href to add a small pointer that says, which by the way, and by the way, there's a note on that.
Yeah. So I think we are getting into the habit of referencing clarifications from core in other documents, as we have started with DNS over CoAP, and we can do the same thing with href. Somehow my brain wants to look for the caulking gun and put some silicone into your walls, Marco. It's really interesting.
My walls.
Yeah, this whistling that we're hearing sounds like you have some holes in your walls, and they are excited by some wind entering your building.
I'm more leaning towards the explanation that you offered earlier about some DC-DC converter having resonating with something audible.
Yeah, you probably have a bad capacitor in your laptop, and that is leaking into.
But I only heard it when I put on my headphones.
I'll change those.
Yeah, so generally it's just a really good idea to do the analog to digital conversion outside the box of the laptop. So even if this is slightly more expensive, it generally helps.
Yeah, I don't want to get back to the setup where I always had a 4-port XLR audio card connected to my docking station, but yeah, maybe.
You can also use a USB microphone, and that also solves the problem.
I'm just glad you're not complaining about my audio quality, but because actually I'm like recording from the built-in microphone of my framework. So
yeah, if it's
apparently it's good enough.
If it's a good laptop, that's just something that reviews of laptops rarely tell you whether it has a good audio system or not. Okay.
There has just been an input from Akim, actually, on PR40.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's referring to a question in the discussion in the issue.
So session resumption is a sequence of messages, but before it was common approach to continue encryption if a peer assumes an IP address change. Okay. Okay, so probably what I'm referring to then in the text is either both session resumption and CID continuation.
Are they using the term continuation? Because if they don't, then we could use just this as our term of going on with a co-op relationship.
I'll have to check. Although continuation is probably not the term that I would use as the most general one, because in the OSCORE case, it's more of a recovery than a continuation. So you've lost some state, or you've kind of garbage collected some state, and thus you don't know what's a replay anymore.
Yeah, but the business continuity people are going to tell you that's exactly what their work is about.
Okay. Then
So maybe we can use continuity. Hello.
Carsten sagt auch Hallo. So apart from Achim's comment that kind of creates ensures that this part of that thread is unopened, stays open, I have at least 3 action items taken from all of this in terms of appending my issues. So that's something that I will work on until we aim for a re-upload.
Okay.
Merging this evening.
So you will work on that on your repository, because when GitHub uses the word synchronize, they actually mean pull.
Yeah. So I think given that issue is that's a pull request aimed at core.working group main from my repository, I cannot switch that branch over the under that issue. So either we can accept that issue, or we close it, or we keep working on that source branch.
Yeah. Let's do that. So there is another branch with that name on the core working group repository now.
I've merged that in already, so if you just remove that branch, I think there will be clarity again.
No, I need to keep that so I can make changes.
Those changes that you made did not wind up in my pull request before I explicitly merged them in.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is you have to do this occasionally.
Okay, so whenever you provide input there, you just pull. Yeah, you just PR.
So you have a way of
Yes.
actively accepting the changes that I'm making.
Yes. Okay.
So I also didn't manage to make a pull request to your pull request because it just doesn't allow me to set that as a base. That's also confusing.
Can you remember the good old days when we just sent patches over email?
Wow.
Yeah, so the Linux kernel people are still doing that, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I think we're done with this topic. There's no other topic officially. Any other AOB that you want to discuss? If none, looking forward to seeing you in Dublin.
See you at the
In
hackathon.
person again.
See you.
Have a good time and good travels until then. Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.